There's no single path to becoming a great leader, no predictor of where the defining moment will be when the spark ignites. For Gene Cartledge, it came in the doorway of an airplane.
I was in the airborne, and I wasn't brave. I was an absolute coward. And when I stood in the door of that airplane, I can tell you my knuckles were white, and I jumped. And I finally thought about, why did I jump? Not because I was patriotic, not because you get $100 more a month, but I jumped because I'd rather die than make an ass out of myself in front of my buddies. And that lesson taught me that if you can form teams, your team members would rather die than they would to let their members down.
The Army may have taught Mr. Cartledge a key lesson in leadership, but it was not where he discovered his entrepreneurial spirit. That came with Mother's Milk.
And when I was 14 years old, we started a little company called Cartledge and Amos Snowball Company. People would line up to buy our snowballs. And since that time, I have never run a business. I've never been in an enterprise where the margins were quite as high as Cartledge and Amos Snowball Company.
You're finna open the chickens. You might want to back up.
Perhaps it was the recollection of his own youth that's led Mr. Cartledge to Bethesda, where he's a key supporter of other boys trying to earn their way in the world.
Gene sort of went out of his way to get to know Bethesda. And I remember him coming in here one day here at the school, and we just went back to the school, and he said, I want to learn everything. Just tell me everything. So he sees in what we do somehow a reflection of his own life.
If ever an angel fell. After the success of the snow cone business, Mr. Cartledge set his sights on the entertainment industry, playing drums and vibes, even earning a slot with the celebrated Frankie Laine.
I got interested in music, and I started playing in the local bands around there. In those days, if you could play music, you could generally get a job, and I always had a job.
Rammer, jammer, yellow hammer, give them hell, Alabama! Roll Tide!
Not only did music get Gene Cartledge a job, it got him into the University of Alabama on a music scholarship and brought him lifelong friendships with other folks who know the proper way to spend a Saturday afternoon in the South.
We just beat the hell out of here!
Out of Tuscaloosa, Gene landed a job with Procter & Gamble for a couple of years, but then headed north with Union Bag, where good fortune followed.
I met this Gail Perry. I really never amounted to much until I met Gail.
A bag salesman was probably not high on the list of potential suitors for the lovely Ms. Perry, but Gene made his case work with a little charm and a little chutzpah.
I'm not sure I was a top bag salesman, but being a salesman, I probably convinced her I was.
The two eloped and soon after began a meteoric rise to the top.
He was down in the trenches, and he learned it from the bottom up, and it didn't take him long to rise to the top.
What kind of family you got?
Oh, I got 2 grown girls that's college educated. And
in 1983, Mr. Cartledge was named president of Union Camp.
yeah, they live right here close. And
Boy, you're a lucky man.
I'm very blessed. Very blessed.
Hi there. I'm Gene Cartledge.
In 1986, chairman and CEO. During those years, Union Camp's sales and assets grew by over $2 billion.
Hey there, Mike. How you doing?
He did it, he says, by listening.
When we had machinists or mill workers who were deacons of their church, who were in some cases they were mayors of their community. They were prominent citizens. But because they either didn't go to college or they married early, they were working in a paper mill, shift work. And I never forgot that those fellows might be smarter than we are.
I think the thing that made him a great leader is that he treats everyone with respect, and he treats the CEO of the company with the same respect that he treats the person who cleans up at night and turns off the lights when they leave. No difference to him.
True mark of a great leader is to develop those that are around you, and Gene's excellent at that.
How's my hair look?
The Savannah plant was one of 93 worldwide operations Mr. Cartledge was responsible for. But Union Camp was to that era what Gulfstream is to the city today. The model corporate citizen that's always the first call for a community need. Gene Cartledge set the tone for how the company would respond.
Oh, you always have the opportunity, maybe the pressure, to commit your money to the New York Opera, and when you do that, you get to associate with folks, and we resisted that, and finally, what we decided is that we would follow our employees, and if they gave money to the United Way, that's where we would spend our money.
And the employees did give to United Way, a tradition that Mr. Cartledge continues.
Always at the highest level, never seeking any kind of recognition, just giving from the heart and helping us in many ways.
There are two things from his years at Union Camp that Mr. Cartledge is most proud of. One is the decision to refurbish the Savannah plant under Jerry Ballengee's leadership rather than close it. That's a multi-million-dollar decision. The other is that under people like Ralph Stagner at International Paper, none of the Union Camp paper mills have closed during a time in the industry when over 100 operations have been shuttered.
I'm proud of that.
See this bridge that crosses Diamond Causeway? Don Waters says there's good value in it.
One of the great, what you might call, incubator projects in Savannah's history, when you consider the local paper manufacturer acquired, owned, developed a very significant real estate investment, which now, of course, is a huge part of our tax base and our talent pool. So there are thousands of people who would not otherwise have come to Savannah and enriched our community.
Across that bridge is a community known as the Landings, a community created out of Union Camp.
One of our guys figured out that wait a minute, this land is worth more than growing pine trees.
In the automobile business, it's probably been the best thing that's happened to us.
Mr. Cartledge says that Branniger's Jim Reed and the community itself are the catalyst behind the success of the Landings.
And they've continued to make it better even than we thought we could make it. So I bought this house that my wife had never seen. I will never do that again.
In 1994, Gene and Gail Cartledge joined the movers and shakers at the Landings and added their energy to Savannah.
Gene was a good old country boy from Panama City, and we were certainly looking for some new blood, and he added it.
There's a lot of golf played these days, but on Saturday mornings you'll find him at Starbucks, the only businessman with a group of doctors who appreciate what he brings to the conversation.
He is very interested in everybody else's opinion, everybody's story. He's one of these people he's a great listener, but when he's not listening, he's thinking and asking great questions. And sometimes you can tell more about somebody from the questions they ask than from the answers they give you to your questions.
Several times a year, the Cartledges gather the clan together for an exotic trip. This is clearly the most important thing in his life.
I've learned as much from my children as they've ever learned from me, and still do. And I revel in how they raise their children. And I have to say, my son-in-laws and son are much better fathers than I ever was. They've done things, and I've been so very proud of them as a result.
He's carried the family to exotic places like the Serengeti and the Galapagos Islands. But ultimately, the memories made will have less to do with where they were and more to do with Gene and Gail, the way they live their lives and the kind of people they are.
If everybody could listen the way Gene Cartledge listens, we wouldn't have a lot of communication problems.
A very down-to-earth, comfortable man, comfortable in his skin.
He's a handsome devil, and he's just someone that I think people would aspire to be like.
Gene is the kind of person that just gravitates to the top and leads people, and he's got such an attitude about him that makes people want to work for him, and he's got the vision that it takes.
He's got an incredibly keen sense of humor. He has impeccable manners. He is truly a gentleman in the truest sense of the word.
Gail and I built a beautiful family. My grandchildren admire and love one another. They cannot wait to be together. It changes the world when you have cousins. My grandchildren know who will be at the weddings. They know who will be at the funerals. They know who will be at the important events. And if Gail and I have a legacy, that would be it. We've left our grandchildren with such wonderful memories.
Gene Cartledge is a laureate in the Junior Achievement Savannah Business Hall of Fame.